Hello! Okay, chapter 8 in Genesis. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark. And he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. Why did he send a wind over the earth? I believe it was probably to help speed up the evaporation process, and also to maybe help move the waters to the lakes and ponds and oceans to get it off the land. That's my theory. Theory is different than fact. Verse 2, now the springs of the deep and the floodgates of the heavens had been closed, and the rain had stopped falling from the sky. The water receded steadily from the earth. At the end of the 150 days, the water had gone down. And on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. It does not say on the mountain of Ararat. So it's probably talking about all the mountains around that area, including the mountain of Ararat. Which, by the way, many people have been in search of Noah's Ark on the mountain of Ararat, and some people who have read this have also looked on the mountains around that area. I understand that a boat landing that's made of wood, landing on the top of a mountain, could still be around today, because it could be snow covered and everything. I also understand that snow and ice and everything would move, and that it could very well destroy that boat. Unless God wanted to save that boat as proof, I find it a long stretch to think that boat's still around. I mean, we don't know that Noah's Ark was the first boat. They may have been traveling on the oceans before that. We know there was oceans, there was creatures in the sea. So, since there may have been boats before that, and we know there have been many boats since Noah's Ark, why would we expect these boats to survive? So there'd be thousands and thousands and thousands, maybe millions of boats all over the place. Okay, you say no, only ones that are snow covered would survive. Well, I wouldn't expect to find boats on the top of the mountains, except Noah's Ark. But still, I mean, the shifting of the ice and everything, I would think would crack and break it. But I'm not saying that it doesn't still exist. I just find it bizarre that people then look for it, with all the odds being against it still being there. Well, most of the odds. Couldn't possibly be all the odds if it's there. Okay, so in verse 5, the waters continued to recede until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. After 40 days, Noah opened the window he had made in the ark and sent out a raven, and it kept flying back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. So that raven must have been tired until it found a dry spot. I don't know how many days it was till it found a dry spot. The Bible doesn't tell us. Verse 8, then he sent out a dove to see if the water had receded from the surface of the ground. But the dove could find no place to set its feet, because there was water all over all the surface of the earth. So it returned to Noah in the ark. He reached out his hand and took the dove and brought it back to himself in the ark. Sounds a little bit like my hummingbird story, doesn't it? The one that I told in chapter 7. If you haven't watched that, you might want to. It's at the very end of chapter 7. Verse 10. He waited 7 more days and again sent out the dove from the ark. When the dove returned to him in the evening, there in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. I imagine there must have been celebrating on the boat at that time, because remember, they're still stuck on the boat. The boat landed. They're still surrounded by water, and they're still living on this boat. They may have been under the impression they would be there for only 40 days and 40 nights. And it wouldn't stop raining. Yay, we'll be gone. We'll be out of here soon. But no, that wasn't the case. Okay, it was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So that bird yanked that leaf off on purpose and brought it back to Noah. Then Noah knew that the water had receded from the earth. Verse 12, he waited 7 more days and sent the dove out again. But this time, it did not return to him. I don't believe the dove died. I believe the dove found its new home. Verse 13, of course, that's my opinion. By the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, the water had dried up from the earth. Noah then removed the covering from the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. By the 27th day of the 7th month, the earth was completely dry. Now, that doesn't mean there were no oceans or lakes anymore. It just means the land that God intended to be dry was dry. The land where the creatures had been living before the flood. It was dry now. Verse 15, then God said to Noah, come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Why would he have to tell them that? You would think they'd be so freaking excited, but they would be running off the boat. Well, remember what they just went through? They went through the most horrible time in the history of mankind on earth, where everything was wiped out. Animals, birds, and people. They may have been too scared to get off that boat. That boat's been protecting them. Verse 17, bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply on the earth, and be fruitful and increase in number upon it. Verse 18, so Noah came out, together with his sons and his wife, and his sons' wives, all the animals and all the creatures that move along the ground, and all the birds, everything that moves on the earth, came out of the ark, one kind after another. So it sounds to me like they came out according to their kind, like 2 of each or 7 of each, depending on how many of their kind it was, because it says one kind after another. So it sounds like they came out in sets or in groups. Verse 20. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord. Now this is the first time I think that we really hear altar. Okay, before when Cain and Abel gave, it was an offering, and it may not include it in the altar. They might have just handed it to the Lord because he was walking the earth. But in this case now, then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. Makes sense. Now it makes sense why we have 7 of every type of bird and 7 of every kind of clean animal that's acceptable to the Lord. Because Noah is going to kill some of them as soon as he gets off the boat. He's thrilled that God chose to save him and his family, I imagine. Imagine he's thrilled. He may be in extreme fear of the Lord as well. But he takes some of these sets of 7 and sacrifices them. If they had been sets of 2 and he had sacrificed even one of them, that species would no longer exist. But he can sacrifice up to 5 of each type of bird and up to 5 of each type of clean animal, and as long as he leaves a male and female, they can still procreate, and we haven't lost that species. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart. Now, why it was pleasing to the Lord, I do not understand. Maybe when he said he sacrificed burnt offerings on it, I don't know. Maybe he thought the Lord would come back and walk on the earth again, and he was making dinner for him. I don't understand. But the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma. Wow, I mean, when I go outside and I smell somebody barbecuing, that's very pleasing to me. I really wish that they'd invite me. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, never again will I curse the ground because of man. Even though every inclination of his heart is evil from childhood. and never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. Verse 22, as long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. Okay? So as long as the earth endures, we will always have the farming time, seed time and harvest. We will always have the hot and cold temperatures. We will always have summer and winter. We will always have the day and the night. None of those will cease as long as the earth endures. And that's chapter 8.